This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On Friday the 23rd of March 2006, 17-year-old Johnny Quaid fell off a roof while collecting his jacket from the building site where he was working. 2 weeks later, Johnny eventually woke up from a coma in the Mater Hospital with no recollection at all of what had happened to him. While recovering, he quickly learned that he would never regain the use of his legs as a result of a spinal injury. In part one of this two-part podcast, Johnny chats about his love of Gaelic football, going to New York to live the American dream, and how he coped with knowing that life ahead was going to be radically different. He chats about his sink or swim mentality and the support of family, friends and the community in Athea in West Limerick. Let's hear from Johnny. A huge welcome to Johnny Quaid to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
Very well, Greg. Thanks a million for asking me on.
This might be a name that a lot of people don't know. And when you hear the name Johnny Quaid, you might be thinking, lead singer in a rock band, quite possibly. I'm looking at you now and I think, yeah, Jesus, that boy could do that, that there's no doubt about that. Could be a cool DJ as well. DJ Johnny Quaid. There's a bit of a ring to it, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I was actually on the radio, so yeah, there's a good ring to it.
Yeah, or a movie star.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all possible. And maybe during the course of the podcast, we can reveal who the real Johnny Quaid is. So it's a Friday, 23rd of March, 2006. You've just started a new job, money in the pocket for the first time. I think you were a month in, full of the joys of it. And that Friday night, what was the plan?
What was the plan? I was working alongside the apprenticeship. I was working in a bar in Athea, where I'm from, and absolutely loved the bar work. So the plan was to finish up work on that Friday and head home and head into work in the bar, which I loved absolutely every minute of it. And unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Because that Friday feeling is pretty cool, isn't it? The week's work is done and we're rocking off, full of the joys of it. And and I believe you forgot your coat.
And I forgot my jacket, Greg, yeah. And actually going back to what you just said, yeah, that Friday feeling back in 2006. So my week's wage back then, I was getting 110 euros for the week's work, and it was heavy, hard work. I was the young apprentice, I was the labourer, I was doing all the donkey work. So I was getting 110 euros for it. But to me, at 17, I was just on the road. I just got a credit union loan for my car. I was the first one of the lads in the village to drive. So I was the bee's knees within Athea. I had the car. So with 110 euros in my back pocket on a Friday, I was absolutely loaded.
Yeah, good man.
I could do everything. So yeah, that Friday feeling had everything. Was heading into a second job that I absolutely loved, like I did every week. And like we'll talk about it, it just didn't happen.
Yeah. Okay, so you have to double back for your jacket. What happened?
Yes, so finished the day's work and I was heading out, and there was a few of us on site, and my boss, we were cleaning up around the site, putting tools into vans, and my boss said, you can head away. And I said, great, no problem at all. Got into my car, started the car, and I was bursting out of the site, and I remembered I forgot the jacket that I'd left on the roof that we were working on that day. So I pulled up, didn't even turn off the car, and I was running past the van and just said it to my boss that I forgot the jacket. And he said, "Mir, while you're up there, will you grab mine?" And after about 10 minutes, boss didn't see me coming back or anything, and said, God, where's that young lad gone? And he just stuck his head out the side of the van, and he said I was just laying there with my jacket in one hand and his jacket in the other.
Wow.
Nobody actually saw me falling. Nobody heard anything. I don't remember it. So nobody actually saw it. I was running up for the jacket 1 minute, and I was waking up in the Mater Hospital 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Were you literally unconscious for 2 weeks, were you?
The minute I hit the ground, I was unconscious for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I fractured my skull as well. So, I was out the minute I hit the ground. I don't know what it is with trauma or accidents. The mind doesn't let you remember certain things. Even I remember driving out of the yard at home the morning of the accident. I remember that. And the funny thing about it is, on that Friday morning, I woke up three and a half hours earlier than I normally would to leave for work. And I woke up in a panic thinking I was late for work. And I was running up the hallway, putting on my work pants, putting on my socks. And my father was working in Limerick City at the time, and he used to have to leave at 5:30 every morning, very early. So he was in the kitchen drinking tea, and I came up in a panic, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm late. He said, "You're not late at all. Go back to bed." I said, "If I go back to bed now, I won't wake anymore, so I just stay up." So I can remember that, but the rest of the day, everything else is only being filled in by my work colleagues, my parents, everything like that.
Okay. So what I would like to do, I'd like the listener to get to know you a little bit, even more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So Johnny Quaid, from a little town in West Limerick called Athea, which I hadn't heard of. You said it's Athea.
That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the population of the place?
Population of Athea would be, say, between 2,000 and 3,000.
Oh God, that's a fair old town. Your mum and dad, what do they do for a living?
Currently, my father is a painter decorator, and my mom works for the HSE in home help.
Okay.
But back as I was growing up, they had a taxi service.
All right.
Yeah.
And growing up, good fun? Did you have a good life?
Greg, I had the best childhood I'd say anybody could have,
Yeah.
and especially because it's in Athea. To me, Athea is a small village. I know you said that's a fair sizable place, but I'm now living in Tralee, coming from Athea to Tralee. When I first came to Tralee, I might as well have been in Manhattan. You know, like so, Athea, just a small, close-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. But yeah, I had absolutely the best childhood, the best community people around me. All looked after each other. So I wouldn't pay to have any other childhood. I wouldn't change a minute of it.
Yeah. What's the benefit of living in a nice small community like that? Because I know with the way things are now, with the cost of housing and everything, a lot of city folk, if they want any chance of getting a house, they're kind of being forced to move out further and further. There's people living in the country who said they never would. Go on, sell living in a small town to me from the point of view of a city slicker.
I suppose when I was in Athea and I was looking at everybody around me, people that were living in Athea all their lives, or people that moved into Athea from the likes of Dublin. We had people from Dublin City coming in and living in Athea, and straight away you would take to the community aspect and feeling of the likes of a place like Athea. You're taken under everybody's wing. You're looked after. The feeling I got from it is everybody loved everybody. No, they could cut their throats the following day, but when it's needed and when people are needed, people in the likes of the small community of Athea, they were there.
And tell me the conversations around the kitchen table in your house when you were growing up.
Very, very interesting conversations around our kitchen table because of the likes of the taxi service. And I worked in the bar. And the bar I worked in, that was the bar in Athea, for young and old. And my parents were taking droves of people out of that bar every night and taking them to the towns like Abbeyfield and Listowel, or the nightclubs, you speak. So I would be telling my parents what happened in the bar. My parents would be telling me what happened in the bus on the way to the town. And then they'd also have the stories of what those lads were like on the way back home at 3 o'clock in the morning. So very interesting stories coming from that house.
Yeah, I can imagine. And who got it on with who. So in a way, you were like Grand Central from the point of view of gossip and knowing everything and everybody that moved in the place.
Yeah, and my parents were so well known because they were the taxi within the village.
Yeah.
So absolutely everybody and their mother knew Jack and Ann Quaid.
Yeah.
So by that, they all knew me from the bar as well.
And tell me, when you're in school and for whatever reason, the teacher has lost your attention and your head goes to somewhere different, where does your head go?
Onto the football field.
Yeah.
Onto the football field. Yeah. I was a massive Gaelic footballer always. And within that, then when we went on to secondary school with the school's team. And that, from playing football, I suppose got me out of a lot of trouble as well.
Yeah.
With teachers and things. But to the football field would be where my head and where the passion would be.
Mm-hmm. You like the work behind the bar, did you?
Absolutely, love the work, and I know it was the best thing I ever did, because it brought me out myself. It taught me how to be sociable. It taught me the conversations to have with people, and in a bar you can imagine conversations with people that are happy, that are sad, that are angry, that are bitter. And it taught me how to have conversations across the board with people, how to handle people, how to keep people happy, how to know what people actually wanted. So it was working in a bar was the best thing I ever did.
Did you consider it as a career, maybe?
See, my plan always was to finish up at school, to start my apprenticeship. And then when I had my apprenticeship finished with here in Ireland, to go to New York. There was a family friend in New York for years that set up his own carpentry business. So my plan was to leave when I had my apprenticeship, go over to him and live the American dream, I suppose. And absolutely, yeah. On the side, do a bit of bar work.
Yeah. Okay. So that decision to take up a trade, what drew you in particular to what you were doing?
I suppose it was more, school wasn't for me, and with the likes of, with my family, it was a trade is the way to go. A trade is the road to go, because back in early 2000s up to 2006, the place was absolutely booming in construction. So a trade was the place to be for that. Yeah. And I was a young fella and I was active, and studies weren't my strong point. So construction sites and a trade was the road to go down for me.
Yeah, and as you say, the Celtic Tiger was roaring mad at that stage, and God Almighty, that building boom was never going to end the way it happened, and it's funny, it's all back again. Mm-hmm. So you woke up 2 weeks later in the Mater Hospital, and the realization of what happened and the processing of that for you, what was that like? Could you even talk me through the steps or maybe the phases of all of that?
So I was in a induced coma, and the doctors were trying to bring me out of that coma step by step. So they'd bring me around, see how I'd react. For a while, I reacted very bad to it, so they put me back under. And I have a vague memory of, because it was in intensive care. There was only two people allowed in at one time to see me, and this particular time, my two brothers were allowed in to see me. So they were at either side of the bed, and they were just bringing me around. And I don't know why. There's no explanation for my side. That I just went berserk, and I pulled the IVs out of my arm, and there was a tube going up my nose down into my stomach. I pulled that out. So it was actually distressing enough for my family to see, but they had to put up the cot sides, the metal sides on the hospital bed, and with bandages tie my hands to the cot sides. So just to protect myself, really. So I have a vague memory of that. But when I fully came around, my mom and dad were at the bedside. Sorry, go back on that. The first time I came around that I remember fully, my sister was sitting at the side of the bed and she was reading a magazine. And she hadn't realized that my eyes were open, and I had a neck brace as well, so I was kind of straining to look to the side. And she eventually caught my eye. And because of the fractured skull, I was speaking like a 4-year old. I was mumbling. And my sister said she was just rubbing my head and she was asking, was I okay? And I just, she tells me I just mumbled the words of an old friend of mine back, well, at 15, 16 years of age, that actually died in a car crash. And she said that I mentioned his name and that he taught me to go back. So that was fairly shocking to the family, like you'd imagine.
God, so you said to her that this poor lad that had passed away had said to you to go back. In other words, to go
He
back.
said he either said go back or he just pointed to go back.
Okay. In other words, stay alive, please.
Not your time to come on, yeah.
Wow. That's incredible, isn't it? Did you know that lad, did you?
Very good friends of them.
Okay.
Very good friends of them. Yeah, yeah. No, he was maybe a year and a half older than me, but we were all the one group within the village.
Okay. Okay.
And it was only 5 months before my accident that he was killed in their car.
Okay. At what point, Johnny, did people explain to you what had happened and you were in a state to comprehend it? Do you know what I mean?
There was never a point where a doctor sat at the edge of my bed and they explained the prognosis to me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't realize this was the story. I knew very quickly that I was in trouble because I was in the mater one day, and a physiotherapist does the rounds to all patients in the bed and to do stretches. And I was kind of in and out of consciousness, and I opened my eyes one day and there was a physio at the end of my bed with a leg up in his shoulder and stretching the calf. And I was looking and going, that's not my leg. That can't be my leg. I can't feel it up in his shoulder, and I can't feel him stretching it. So I must have kind of went back under, but the minute I came around again, I knew, yeah, this is yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the prognosis? Did you lose the use of your legs or?
Mm-hmm. It was a T10, T11 level of injury, and so that is from the waist down. I'm a complete spinal injury, which means there's no movement or sensation below that level.
Okay. So you're getting better, at least the parts of you that can get better. but there's one part of you that just is not going to get better. So obviously that must have been the weirdest thing of all, that you were progressing and your head is getting sorted and all that kind of thing. Your speech is coming back. But there does come a point then where you realize, okay, this is life part two, or the different life has begun. That realization, I presume that was just a gradual thing, was it? Or
It was gradual because, so after the Mater Hospital, I was moved on to the National Rehabilitation Hospital in Leary. And once you get in there, you're given a timetable of what you have to work on with physiotherapy, psychology, OT, speech and language, everything. So going into the NRH was like you were starting a new job. You had 5 days a week. You had physiotherapy 9 to 11. You had OT 12 to 2. All of this. So it was only once I had left the NRH that realization properly set in, because you're in the NRH, you're in a bubble. Everybody around you, we're all in the same boat. No, there was a lot worse cases than I in the hospital, which kind of helped me an awful lot as well, saying, come here, you need a bit of a kick up the backside here, because, things could be an awfully lot worse. But it was only when I got home and rural Ireland, accessibility, wasn't driving. There's no public transport in Athea. And if there was, it probably wouldn't have been wheelchair accessible anyway. So it was when I got home that it all kind of dawned on me that, like you said, this is life part two.
yeah, I'd say it's not even a case of the penny dropping, the penny crashing down on top of you and flattening you on the floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Johnny, you obviously witnessed a lot of people in rehab, and they're all struggling with a particular situation. And we do that with ourselves. It's you, the character, it's Johnny Quaid, who has to get through your battle. And all of the other people inside in the hospital, in rehab, trying to wrestle with their demons and their challenges, but it's them as individuals and their characters. So when you look at that door of that challenge, are you Johnny Quaid? Are you saying, I'm the luckiest man to be alive at all? Like my buddy who told me, your game isn't over. Or are you saying, are you just cursing what's happened and in the darkest hole ever? Did you find yourself looking at those two doors and making a choice between them? Or how did you even process that?
The way I looked at it was, this is a sink or swim sort of situation.
Yeah.
You can go one way or the other. I didn't even contemplate the other way. That road seemed a lot more daunting than the road I'm on now.
Okay.
Where I am now, I only dreamed about when I was looking at those two roads. And it's better, but I think it all comes back to the family I had around me and the friends and the community of Athea. And it's because I had all that behind me. I knew I can get through this, no problem.
Yeah.
Oh, there'll be ups and downs and blips. And I might throw the odd curse about something the odd day. But this won't define me. This won't.
Okay. So you're back in Athea. March, the accident happened. When would you have got back home?
March. So I was allowed home for sporadic weekends while I was in the hospital. I thought they were just being nice to the patients to let them back into the community to see their friends. On a Friday, leave the hospital on a Friday, be back in the hospital on the Sunday evening and Sunday night. But really what they were doing was they were prepping us to be back into the real world.
Okay.
I was doing that for a few weeks, and I came back up on a Sunday, and I met the nurse at the nurse's station, and she said, how was home? I said, it was great. Absolutely loved it. Hated coming back. but I'm here now. And she said, would you like to go home on Wednesday? And I said, I'm only after coming up. She said, I mean, go home for good. And I said, yes, please. So back in Athea, so when I came into the hospital, I was back in Athea 4.5, 5 months later. And my consultant, about 3 months earlier, my consultant came to me and said, Johnny, you're 17 years of age. You're not going to go back up in the roof. We want you to go back to school. I said, absolutely forget about it. No, no way. I said, I will do anything but go back to school. And they stayed on me, in fairness to them, they stayed on me for weeks. And I said, look, the only way I will think about going back to school is if I can go back to my old secondary school. Because they wanted me to go to a secondary school that was newly built, wheelchair accessible, everything was there, but in a different town of Newcastle West. I said, I don't know Newcastle, I know nobody in Newcastle. The only way is I'd go back to my old school in Abbeyfield, which is about 400 years old. I don't think a wheelchair was ever inside that gate. So they said, we'll see what we can do. They'll contact the principal and see what can be done. So they did, and they agreed. To this day, I don't know how that principal agreed, because I think the teachers had a celebration in the staff room the day Johnny Quaid walked out of the school. So, but in fairness to them, they all agreed. It was during summer holidays that my brother drove past the school and he saw working teachers carrying wheelbarrows across the yard full of cement and pour ramps, putting up handrails around the place. So I said, look, if they're putting this work in to get it wheelchair accessible for me, I have to go back.
Yeah.
I have to go back. I really do. So that's
They caught you.
They caught me. They caught me.
And maybe that was all just put on for your benefit, just as that. Yeah, let's put on a bit of a show, so guilt him into it.
Maybe.
Okay, so back to school, and from school then, did you do third level or what did you do?
Yes, so after secondary school, after the Leaving Cert, I went on to the college here, the IT as it was, to do computers and media. But from looking back at the whole thing now, going back to school was really, it wasn't about getting good grades. It wasn't about getting a degree. It was getting Johnny back out there.
Yeah.
Getting Johnny meeting people. Getting Johnny to be seen by people and be okay with it. That's what all that was about. And it was, so what if he doesn't get high grades and a master's here? That's secondary. Johnny needs to get out into the real world. It's the real world.
And was Johnny okay with all that?
Johnny wasn't told that. Johnny wasn't told that. He was. I was expected to put the head down and work hard, but if I wasn't okay in the head about it and I couldn't get up out of the bed in the morning to face the world, what good is the degree or the course I'm in?
Okay, and that idea of pushing you back into school and getting you up and out and all that, where did that come from?
It started with those doctors in Dunleary, because I suppose they saw, before I went in there, they saw so many young people coming through, and they probably saw an awful lot of my age group having an accident, and they could have ended up in residential care, or they could have been at home every day drawing benefits, playing games, wasting away. They could have been getting more sick because they weren't active or anything. So the doctors pushed that. And conversations they probably had with my family unknowns to me about, is he a goer? Does he want to
Yeah.
drive on here, like, or
And while it was life part two for you, I'm sure in exactly the same way it was life part two for your parents. I'm sure they didn't have experience of disability, or suddenly they're faced with this weird situation. Your friends and exactly the same. So I suppose in a way, while you to come around to it, they had to come around to it as well and respond to this new situation.
absolutely. And I've had conversations with mom over the years, and I like talking to the likes of mom about that time, and especially when the times I wasn't aware of, and what conversations are being had with doctors and consultants and nurses. And she said, Johnny, it always came down to you, and if you accepted it, and how you were going to adapt and drive on. Because if you didn't kind of drive on and adapt to anything, the conversations we were having were pointless. And it was us as parents and a family were totally waiting on you to see, would you drive on or would you crack? We were waiting for that to see what.
And that decision to drive on, was that just in you the whole time? You know, I'm not going to let this beat me. Or did that creep into your psyche over time? Did you have to start believing that, my God, that there's a brilliant life out there and it's all possible for me? Was that in you, or did that take a while to kind of come around?
I think it was always in me.
Okay.
I don't remember the first week or two or the first month of waking up from the accident and going through the horrors or fighting demons to get out the other side.
Yeah.
I always remember just being super positive about what happened. I never uttered the words out loud or to myself, why me? I just never did it. I have never or will never pat myself in the back and say, well done for that. That kind of stuff doesn't even into my head. And I suppose it's a flaw. I don't give myself credit. You've no choice here. You've no choice. You drive on or stay in bed. There's no credit to be given to me for that. Interestingly enough about it is, you were asking where does it come from? During the summer holidays when I'd be younger, 7, 8 years of age, my father's parents lived in Athea as well. And they were in their late 70s, early 80s. And during the summer holidays, I would go back and stay with my grandparents for Friday and Saturday night. And because they had chickens and they laid eggs, and I was often curious, and I just loved it. So I don't think I heard my grandfather say a word while my grandmother was alive. All I can remember was my grandfather in the corner next to the fire with a big newspaper over across his head. Because my grandmother wouldn't shut up talking. So as my father said, he wasn't left talk.
Yeah.
But my grandmother passed away. So during the summer, I kept it up. I'd stay with my grandfather. And he was in his early 80s, and he got a clot in his leg, and he had to get an amputation from just below the knee. He was fitted for a prosthetic. And I remember in the back room, we used to call it in the cottage, I used to get up in the morning and I'd have to pass out his bedroom. And I'd see him sitting on the edge of the bed, always well dressed. He'd get a shirt every morning. And I used to pass the door at 8 or 9 years of age and see him putting his prosthetic on, a man of 82 or 3 years of age. And he'd get up and into the kitchen with getting breakfast ready, putting on the fire, going out for turf, all this. And my mother says to this day, from you seeing that at that age, you got something from looking at, you could say, me from a 17-year-old adapting, He was a man of 83 at that time.
Yeah.
So Mom said, you took something from that.
And while you're talking about adapting, now you have to adapt your dreams because you had this plan, do the construction work, live the American dream. So, and obviously with a particular type of work and everything. So you have to replace that with a different version of your dreams. So what did that other version become?
That other version, I suppose it quickly, the past dreams quickly faded anyway, because what was it, a year and a half, 2 years after that, construction just fell completely out of it. So I said,
You saw it coming.
well, I'm lucky in one way, because if I was in construction at the time, I probably would have went to England, would have went to America. I could have been in Athea. I could have been out of work. I could have been sitting at a bar 7 days a week, drinking and coming to nothing. So I said it could have gone either way there. So yeah, I suppose with like the new dreams. Yeah, I suppose there was a lot to get my head around there. All right, there was a lot of figuring out too.
Yeah. And you probably discovered things about yourself in terms of interest that you'd never have stumbled upon, I'm presuming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it was going down because I went to college after secondary school. I could really see my limitations at that point.
Okay.
I was very limited to what route you can go down here. And a lot of that was office-based books. And I suppose as you grow older as well, I kind of came out of that 17 or 18-year-old mind frame of, I don't want to do any of that kind of businessy and the schooling, the studying and the reading and all that. You kind of, I suppose I grew up a lot faster than I would have, I suppose.
So career-wise, what are you doing now?
So now I'm working in a primary care centre in Listowel in County Kerry. I am administration support to the network manager within Listowel. So yeah, just absolutely flat out. I would be personal assistant to the manager, so there'd be an awful lot of looking after her diary. I suppose I would be gatekeeper to her as well, so an awful lot would be coming through me to try and get to her because she's a wanted person. And I just have to be the bad guy most of the time.
And I met you at the Active Disability Ireland launch. That was quite recent. And you were one of their superstars, one of their poster boys involved in some of the different activities and everything else. All I could see, because I hadn't met you before, just a really bright, fine-looking, strong lad, and it was, I'm not sure what that is like for you when, a curly-haired asshole wanders over to you and starts asking questions. I think I asked you were you from Donegal because someone else that was involved was in Donegal. You quickly told me you weren't. When people look at you, are they curious? Does everyone want to go, well, what happened to you? And that's a natural thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's natural. I never had a problem with it for the last 17 years. I've never had a problem with a stranger coming up to me on a night out at an event and asking me, come here, what's the story?
Yeah.
What happened? And I think an awful lot of people know by looking at me, this is not from birth, Anna. And 99% of people go to, you were in a car crash, weren't you? And it's because I'm a young fella. He must have been in a car crash after the maggot around the road.
Yeah, what speed were you going at, Johnny?
Oh yeah, what speed, yeah.
The boy racer.
But I never had an issue with it because people are naturally curious.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm curious myself, even when I meet other wheelchair users at events. I'm curious what happened. I'm dying to find out what happened. So I wouldn't take that to heart, people asking that kind of stuff.
Are people weird around people with disability?
Younger people are. Yeah, when I went back to school, friends I had for years at school and things, I lost a lot of friends. Because, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't wrap their head around, how do I talk differently to this fellow now? He's not the same anymore because he's sitting down. He's no crack anymore. Oh, I probably wasn't any crack for a few weeks. But I was allowed that.
Yeah, you weren't full of the joys of it.
I wasn't full of it. No, I was nursing a couple of injuries, so I wasn't full of crack for a while.
Yeah. It's so funny. My son, they're producing a film. The BBC are involved, and they have a young lad from the north side of Cork, and they call him Robot, but he's a young lad in a wheelchair, and you just watch the crack he has with all of his buddies, and fantastic wit, and it seems to be second nature to him. Maybe he was always in that wheelchair and he was always just another kid, and he just, obviously he has that thing that's a little bit different to the others, and it was lovely to see how he's just one of them and they're racing around the place with him, and it's just one of the antics that they get up to. It's kind of cool, but I can imagine that situation, how people can get a bit odd. And I know we kind of touched on career a little bit. I'm going to tell you a terrible story. In work one day, we had this woman popped in, and I think her role, I don't even know the name of the organisation, you might know it, but their basic role is to get people with a disability, whatever that disability might be like, back into the workforce. People who are more than capable, but for whatever reason, it's more difficult for them to find a job. And her job is to regularly approach employers, try to find out what are your different needs. I've got a great person here, he's very clever, this, that, and the other, he'd fit in perfectly there. And she was saying that they got a call from an employer one day, and the question was, would you have anyone in a wheelchair? We think it would look good at reception. And you think, fucking hell, this is just the worst possible thing that you could ever hear. And she said we were shocked and horrified, and that was disgusting. But then they thought, we actually have Mary, who would be brilliant in that place. And while your man's motivation was shocking and deplorable in every possible way, Mary ended up getting a job there and was brilliant, and in no time at all flew up the ranks and became part of the management team.
I hope you can join me for part 2 of Johnny's incredible story. Life part 2 wasn't how we planned it, but he says he can't believe how lucky he is. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.